around nutrition and specifically plant-based nutrition.
Dr. Jina Shah, do you want to go next?
Sure. Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining. We have, I think, a small enough group. We have good potential for discussion later, too.
Mhm.
So I am a family doctor trained in preventive medicine and public health, and I've recently decided to take a break from my full-time work in oncology drug development. I was working on development of cancer drugs with a very long-term passion and also promoting whole foods, plant-based diets. I became vegan, as we mentioned, about 35 years ago, and it was primarily driven by ethical considerations, really, because I wanted to do least harm to the animals. But then the field of whole foods, plant-based diets and lifestyle medicine grew um, while I was already out of training and already in practice in family medicine and working in public health. And so I would like to do more and more in that. And this webinar is a nice opportunity to take a dive. And with that, I'll turn it over to Karina.
Oh, thank you, Dr. Gina. So I'm located in Central Jersey. I have a master's degree in organizational development and applied psychology. I mostly worked in corporate settings. I moved over to Whole Foods and helped them establish their wellness clubs, and I ran their Health Starts Here program in the Mid-Atlantic area. So I was trained by some really phenomenal lifestyle medicine physicians, and felt very, very, very lucky. I then taught nutrition in a little private school in the Princeton area and joined Ethos Farm in Long Valley to work alongside Dr. Weiss as a health coach. So that was really where, we got our hands right in the mix, and helping people make behavior change. And now, in addition to some work with them as well, I'm with Plant Powered Metro New York, and I work with all of our physicians and speakers in bringing virtual programming to people all over the world so that health education can be for everyone anywhere.
Thank you, panelists, for the introduction. And seems like we have a powerful panel. So let's dive right in. First part, I wanted to focus on how to start this journey, right? I want to direct this to Dr. Reshma Shah. So, Dr. Shah, many families are curious about plant-based eating, but often feel overwhelmed um, about and where to start so in your experience, what are some simple first steps families can start, um, can transition towards more plant forward lifestyle without feeling that they have to change everything around themselves, change overnight? And I'm gonna also invite our other panelists to join in. Dr. Shah, can you lead the question?
Yeah. So I think there are two really easy places to start. The first is I think a lot of people are intimidated by the words plant-based or vegan. It seems like something that's over there and not for them. But the truth is, most people already eat a lot of plant-based meals or vegan meals. So simple things like even pasta with marinara sauce is a plant-based meal.
Right.
Peanut butter and jelly is a plant-based meal. A lot of things that we eat are already plant-based. So I think the first step is identify the meals that are already plant-based and try to serve them more often. So something as simple as a lentil soup or things that don't seem so scary and far away. So the first step is pay attention to is already plant-based in your family's routine that your family and your kids already like and try to serve them more often. And then the second thing is I'm really in favor of an add-in approach. So instead of asking people to give something up, the first step is often where can you add in a little bit more plant-based foods? So something as easy as adding some fresh fruit to breakfast, adding a salad to dinner time. So instead of saying, stop eating this, stop eating that, where can you just start adding more foods in? So I think starting with the plant-based foods your family already enjoys, serve them more often, and then think about small places where you can add in some more plant-based meals. And then when people are ready to, this wasn't so hard, I can do more of this, they can step into something like a meatless Monday and then make it meatless Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and so on. So yeah.
And so, to begin to look at this from a community approach, Karina. You are Planned Parenthood, Metro New York works within the community. So how do you what works well when you guys do outreach, you educate families to start out?
I was very lucky as a Food for Life instructor to be sent to Harvest Family Success Center, which for me is a local organization, and they support families in a lot of different ways, financially, but also nutritionally and with education and support groups. So I was able to teach. Actually, we went in and we did a class for moms, but the moms needed to bring their kids. So I kind of on the spot redesigned the class so that the kids were chopping with plastic knives and mixing together salad dressings. And what we found over the 4 weeks was that the kids were more likely to taste things that were not in a package, leafy greens and sweet potatoes that they hadn't tried before because they were washing them and cutting them and watching them transform and adding spices that they liked. So I think, and I know that when my family went plant-based in 2004, we were lucky enough to have Dr. Furman very local, and he insisted on seeing the entire family. And I was not accustomed to that approach. So all five of us went in and sat in his little office, and he told all of us the reasons that we needed to protect our family's health and the transitions that would help us and the changes that we would see. And I know my kids were very interested in getting, my sons were interested in getting stronger and running faster and not getting so many ear infections and sore throats. And my middle son had asthma at that time, and he was really, really excited about that. So each person had their own why. And by working as a family, we could always bring back those whys in and remind each other about why we were making these changes, even if they weren't easy. So yeah, so Planned Parenthood Metro has an online community, which you're always welcome to join, and I'll put our link in the chat for people who don't have some of the local things that I mentioned. But also, potlucks can put you in line with local potlucks if you can find one. You can find other families interested in having the conversation with you about next steps, which can be very supportive, I think.
Thank you, Karina. And now moving to Dr. Jina Shah. You've been following plant-based lifestyle for many, many years. And what would your advice be to families who are looking to take this first steps?
I'll just share some experience, kind of as a personal story, and then also what I've noticed when I was practicing. So I became vegan, and I didn't know what plant-based was when I was a college student. And so there might be teenagers and college students who are actually the first in their families to try to introduce their parents and other family members. It's a lot easier now than it was back then. So back then, it was harder to have a meal plan in college that was vegan. Certain places, I remember UC Berkeley. I think certain places in the East Coast also, really allow for that. There may be other places around the country where they have a vegetarian meal plan, and it's important to advocate to have a vegan plan and really emphasize that whole foods plant-based. That being said, college students aren't necessarily known for being health focused. So I think in that sense, when Dr. Reshma talks about progress and not perfection, it's okay that it's not entirely whole foods plant-based. Let them have fun, let them eat. If it's plant-based, all the better. Salads are great, but sometimes the vegan pizza wins when you're a kid, when you're a young adult. And then as I was going through my life, I came to the point where I was looking for a life partner, and my husband to be was not even vegetarian when we started seeing each other, when we started dating. But I found that going to places like vegan potlucks, Whole Foods plant-based potlucks, as they evolved, going to sanctuaries really introduced him not only to the why, but also to the how to go Whole Foods plant-based, how to go vegan, how people cook, what they can eat that's really delicious. And by the time I got to that stage, the internet had evolved. So he could simply plug in vegan, whatever it was that I wanted to eat, that we wanted to eat together. And as part of the process of getting to know each other, he would make food that we could both eat that was vegan, and it was really really great. So that was that part of my life, right? And we don't have children, but what I'm doing now in terms of supporting family is supporting my parents as elders, as they're in their mid 80s, and they have a community of whom some members are vegan, most of their friends are vegetarian. They're not necessarily whole foods plant based. They're not necessarily considering when they're choosing what to eat, what's the most health promoting. They may be going for what's comfortable, what's tasty, what's easy to prepare at a time in their lives when it gets harder and harder to prepare. So just sometimes as moms come in and make things easier for their kids, or dads and moms together when they're preparing together, sometimes it's helpful to, for older people who are very health focused, pre-chop some vegetables, explain to parents, my elder parents, like, here's what you can do with it. You guys like collards. You can make, in Gujarati cuisine, there's something that's made with taro leaves called batra. So my parents can make batra with big collard leaves. It's kind of familiar to them. I can come with a big box of arugula that doesn't require a lot of preparation. It's pre-washed, and say, hey, throw this in. One of you has osteoporosis, the other one has anemia. This is going to be helpful to incorporate into your diet. So just kind of, it does take a bit of work from another family, like just like a mom or a dad with their kids. It takes a little bit of work to have someone thinking about this for seniors, but it does help. And then they get to like it, and it becomes part of their routine too.
Thank you for sharing. So seems like from every age and stage in life, I think, adapting slowly or rethinking, right? Rethinking what you're already doing, and adding more nutrition to, if you're, for example, if you're a vegetarian, thinking about rather than something fried, steam, right? And like you said, for cultural cuisine, thinking of patra, collard greens. So wonderful perspectives. Now, I wanted to go to the next question, more focused around a lot of it's concern for parents, right? How do we raise healthy plant-based kids? So parents are often worried that when you talk plant-based, oh, is my child going to get enough nutrients, especially when you plant-based, if you're going whole food plant-based, if dairy is excluded, that's one of the bigger concern. What are the key nutrients? So and how to replace those key nutrients, right? So Dr. Reshma Shah, what are the key nutrients families should pay attention to, and how can parents ensure that their child will thrive nutritionally on a plant-based diet?
Yeah, I think that, a lot of times people are very concerned that if my child is vegetarian or if my child is vegan, they're not going to get all the nutrients that they need. But the truth is, even kids who eat an omnivorous diet are at risk for certain nutrient deficiencies. We know that with picky eating and with a lot of processed foods, there can be nutrient gaps in kids' diets, regardless of the diet that they consumed. Plant-based kids tend to have higher intakes of some of the nutrients that we really want kids to eat, like fiber, certain essential vitamins and minerals. But there are some key nutrients that I don't think you have to worry about, but you have to pay a little bit closer attention to ensure that kids are getting them. And I have, do you want me to wait on the slides? Because I focus on a lot of those in the little presentation that I made. And, in the time that we have together today, we're not going to be able to cover all the nutrients and how to supplement and how much you need. But I think if you focus on these key nutrients, you can ensure that your kid is getting all the benefits of a plant-based diet without the potential for any nutrient deficiencies.
Are you able to?
Do you want me to share my screen now?
Sure, sure, sure. Go ahead, please.
Okay. Okay, can everybody see this?
Yes.
It's working. Okay, so I'm just going to spend a few minutes in talking about what exactly is a healthy, sustainable diet for childhood. Let's see. Okay. So we know that diet is very intimately connected to health, which is, I think, a large focus of our time together today. Diet is actually one of the leading risk factors for chronic disease, even above things like tobacco use, high blood pressure, and alcohol and drug use. So diet is an incredibly important factor when we consider our overall health. Plant-based diets have been associated with a lot of positive health outcomes, including longevity and a reduced risk of all-cause mortality, as well as a reduced risk of overweight and obesity, and a reduced risk of chronic conditions like heart disease, type 2 diabetes, cancer, hypertension, and fatty liver disease. There are also some specific pediatric health benefits. Again, if you think about chronic disease prevention really starts early on in childhood. So if you set kids up with a healthy dietary pattern, it's going to put them at reduced risk of developing some of these chronic diseases later in life. There's also been shown to be a reduced risk of overweight and obesity in children eating a plant-based diet. And in general, children eating a plant-based diet have an overall improved quality of the diet. But this question always comes up. Parents are always asking me, "But is my kid on a plant-based diet going to grow well?" And studies have shown that vegetarian, vegan kids can meet the recommended nutrient intakes, typically have normal growth. There have been some studies in the last 5 or so years that have shown that plant-based kids and specifically vegan kids can have a little bit of shorter height, but they still fall in the normal range. And we'll talk about some of the key nutrients. I think a lot of these studies, when they looked at kids who were following a vegan diet and maybe showed a little bit shorter height, they were actually not getting adequate intakes of key nutrients like calcium, which we'll talk about in just a minute. And plant-based kids following a plant-based diet, and especially those following a vegan diet, have a lower intake of added sugar, saturated fat, and they have a higher intake, as I mentioned, of fiber and many other key nutrients. The key thing is that you want the diet to be well planned. We were talking a little bit earlier before everybody joined that Oreos are actually a vegan food, but that's not the kinds of foods that we're talking about when we're trying to optimize children's diets. So the key thing is to make sure that the diet is well planned. And in terms of what nutrients we're going to focus on, when we look at all children, not just vegan and vegetarian children, but children across the board, most kids are actually getting enough protein. What you want to do is to make sure that they're getting an adequate amount of food, so getting adequate calories, and that they are including a variety of protein-rich foods in their diet. Most kids don't get enough fiber in the diet, but the good news is actually plant-based kids tend to get more fiber than kids that are not eating a plant-based diet. And most kids, again, across the board, not just vegan and vegetarian children, but most kids actually aren't getting enough calcium and vitamin D. And these nutrients are actually important for growth in terms of height. So these are nutrients you actually want to pay attention to. And one thing I want to point out is vegan children who are not consuming a fortified plant-based milk, so a plant-based milk that's fortified with calcium, can actually have a risk of not getting enough calcium in the diet. So that's a very important thing to pay attention to. And I just want to spend a few minutes focusing on a couple of the key nutrients that we should be paying attention to if kids are eating a plant-based diet. Vitamin B12 is sort of a non-negotiable. B12 actually is not found in many plant foods, and so it is a key nutrient that all kids following a vegetarian or vegan diet have to ensure that they're getting adequate B12. Supplementation is safe, it's easy, and it's inexpensive. If kids are following a vegetarian diet, you may get away with doing fortified foods or taking a multivitamin, but I think for most kids, taking a B12 supplement is one of the easiest things you can do. Calcium, as I've mentioned many times, is another key nutrient to pay attention to. These are some plant-based foods that contain calcium, and you can see that while foods like broccoli, kale, almonds, sesame seeds do contain calcium, and it's actually pretty well absorbed, the amount of calcium in these foods can be pretty small. So including 1 or 2 cups of fortified plant-based milks can help to ensure that kids are meeting their calcium needs. Another key nutrient is vitamin D. This we can often, sunlight is promoted as a way to get vitamin D, but we want to protect our skin from harmful UV rays. And so a lot of us are staying out of the sun for excessive periods of time. We're using sunscreen. So vitamin D can come from fortified foods, so a fortified plant-based milk. But most kids, even kids who drink milk, it's hard to get enough vitamin D just from milk. And so taking a vitamin D supplement is something to definitely consider. The next, I just have a couple more quick nutrients. Iron and zinc, they kind of go together because most foods that contain iron also contain zinc. And the other good news is that most protein-rich foods are also good sources of iron. You can also use fortified foods like fortified cereals to make sure you're getting your iron needs. Iodine is a nutrient that I think a lot of vegetarian and vegan families don't realize that they need to pay attention to, especially for families that are eating less salt or if they're using these sort of fancy Himalayan sea salts. The most common sources of iodine in our diet are dairy and seafood. So a lot of plant-based families aren't going to be consuming dairy and seafood. So the next best place to get iodine in the diet is through iodized salt in small amounts, or you can use a multivitamin with iodine or take an iodine supplement. Omega 3s is another nutrient. It's especially important for pregnant women and for young infants. And so the most common sources of omega 3s are fish and seafood, which contain DHA and EPA. I know can be a little complicated, so I'm happy to answer questions about this. Plant-based sources of omega-3 fatty acids include walnuts, chia seeds, hemp seeds, flax seeds. These are all rich in ALA, which is a specific type of omega-3 fatty acid. I think that for some families, if they have the resources and the capability, consider taking a DHA and EPA supplement. DHA and EPA actually, although they're rich in fish and seafood, the place that the fish and the seafood get the DHA and EPA is actually from plants, the algae in the ocean. So there are a lot of vegan DHA EPA supplements that you could take. This is not an absolute necessary one, but for pregnant women and for young infants, I think it's definitely something to consider. And then lastly, we talked a little bit about protein. And I think the key thing is making sure that you're including a variety of protein foods throughout your meals and snacks. Foods like tofu, tempeh, and veggie meats tend to be highest in protein. Lentils and beans are next. Nuts and seeds also have protein. And I always remind people that even fruits and vegetables and whole grains contain protein. And I'm certainly happy to talk about protein powders and bars. I get a lot of questions from parents about, are these foods safe? Should my kid be taking a protein powder or eating all these protein bars? So those are some of the key nutrients. And then really quickly, I just wanted to mention briefly some of the environmental aspects of eating a plant-based diet. We had talked earlier about how sometimes it's the younger generation that might be bringing these ideas about wanting to eat more plant-based. And I find that especially for the Gen Z and now the Gen Alpha, climate change and environment is a key motivator to eating a more plant-based diet. And a lot of dietary guidelines throughout the world, including Canada and the Danish dietary guidelines, are actually putting climate change into their dietary guidelines. We know that animal agriculture contributes, anywhere from 15 to 25% of greenhouse gas emissions. About 60% of all the crops that we grow in the world are used for animal agriculture, and some meaning that we use those crops to feed the cattle and the livestock. And some experts estimate that if we were to actually just take the food that we use to feed animals and actually feed people, that we could largely solve the problem of world hunger. About a third of the Earth's freshwater supply is used for animal agriculture, and over 90% of Amazonian deforestation is due to animal agriculture. So animal agriculture is a leading cause of species extinction, dead zones, water pollution, and devastation of the Amazon, as I mentioned. Additionally, about 70%, when I first heard this statistic, I found it to be so alarming as a physician. About 70% of the antibiotics that are used globally go towards animal agriculture. And this is a leading cause of antibiotic resistance. So one of the reasons we're having so many difficult problems with resistance to antibiotics is because of our use of antibiotics in animal agriculture. I love this graphic from the Plantation Project. If you were to take, the amount of land to feed one person a omnivorous diet, it's about 2 football fields. And this same amount of land could feed 14 people eating a plant-based diet. I think it's just a really nice visual representation. This is the greenhouse gas emissions of various sources of protein, and the top 10 emitters of greenhouse gas emissions all come from animal foods. And you can see beef is the one that really outpaces them all. So if you were going to make one change for climate change, it would be to either significantly reduce or stop eating beef. There is a great short tutorial that I recommend to pretty much anyone that's interested in this topic. It's put out by the Harvard School of Public Health. It's a 10-minute tutorial, and it's a really wonderful way to think about how the changes that you make in your diet can impact your health and climate change. And this is a great summary slide. And you can see that the foods that they talk about focusing on are plant-based foods like vegetables, fruits, legumes, whole grains, nuts, and seeds. And you want to minimize things like red meat, poultry, dairy, refined grain products, sugar, and excess sodium. Just really quickly, if you want some more resources, I in 2020 co-wrote a book on plant-based diets for families, and it goes through a lot of these topics in much greater detail. For those of you that are interested in cooking more plant-based foods, with the team at Plant-Based Juniors, we're actually doing, starting at the end of March, a series of cooking classes that focus on the foods that a lot of families have trouble with, like tofu, whole grains, vegetables, beans, and lentils. And I also have like a free plant-based starter guide. There are QR codes for both of these if you're interested in, going a little bit deeper in some of the topics that I mentioned. And if you want to connect, I work directly with parents, and then I am not always so good at it, but I try to post simple recipes that are delicious for families on Instagram. I feel like that's the way that a lot of people are getting a lot of their information these days. So I talk really fast, I cover a lot, but I'm really happy to take questions.
Thank you, Dr. Shah. That was wonderful. And one more thing I'll put in is local buy, local produce. Some of us, a lot of us are on the East Coast. I'm based in Jersey. Jersey has a very rich agricultural legacy. Spring is right here. Summer is around the corner. Try to find a farmer's market or someplace you can source your produce locally. Another great way when we're talking about sustainability, right?
Yes. As soon as this is done, I'm actually headed to the farmer's market. That's my
Yeah.
next thing.
Me too. Me too.
Yes, I would love to hear, Karina, if you can, speak to parents because community-based, you are always, dealing with families.
Yeah, so for parents and multi-generational households that I work with in my coaching practice, I like to point out the power of their kitchen. So the kitchen is the key to health, right? I don't, we know it is the heart of the house very often because people so happily are drawn to the kitchen. But it has the power to either make your health better or make it a little worse. So if we start in our kitchen, I mean like really taking a look in your pantry and on your grocery list and trying to see if you can upgrade some of those items. Some people like to take a really thorough approach and they go through, and take away any ultra processed foods that might be in their pantry or things that might not be supporting their health, like beef soup or other types of ingredients. So, and just get those all out and just completely donate them. And then other people like to go a little slower and use things up. And then when it's time to replace them, maybe not replace the earth balance or not replace the big 6 gallon of oil, but to find other ways, right? So when you're making your pantry list, you want to look at as much as you can healthy staples like beans and lentils and whole grains, whole grain flours. And then, dried fruits are also nice, especially when you're raising kids or helping with your parents. Um, and looking for recipes. So Dr. Shah's book is Plant Powered's 100% favorite book for families. 100%. So if you can find a book like that or something through Forks Over Knives or something online, find some recipes that mimic what your family is a little bit used to. Like for me, we looked at how to switch up our tacos, right? So how can I make it not a fried shell? How can I make it, a regular cornmeal shell that maybe I bake in the oven or turn into chips? And as Dr. Shah mentioned, marinara sauce with pasta, right? So we switched, from to pasta with broccoli, but with no cheese on it. And we started making little swaps. But I think the thing that really made it the best for me was kind of making whatever day of the week. For me, it was a Sunday. Go to the farmer's market or the supermarket and cook some things. And I still do that now. My kids are almost 40. My oldest is going to be 36. So, and I still make, if I can, if I'm not traveling, Sunday is still my main cooking day. And I'll make a minestrone soup. I know we heard, a lentil soup mentioned earlier. Or I'll do a chana masala, something like that that I can have during the week. I grew up with a lot of Indian friends, so I would make khichdi and sabudana, but a little bit healthier, right? A little bit on the healthier side, and have those for the week going forward. Cutting up fruits and vegetables, making a salad dressing. There are some wonderful like almond balsamic dressings out there, walnut balsamic dressing, where you're, instead of adding oil, which is just so easy to add, you're making it a more nutrient dense fat by using a nut. Or if you're not nut friendly in your house, you can do sunflower seeds and pumpkin seeds and things like that. So you want that kitchen to be ready for you, to meet you during your busy week with what you need. Look at your family. Do people need to eat out? Are you taking, food to work or to school? I used to make for my oldest son, who was so picky, an entire like bread sleeve full of peanut butter and jelly sandwiches that I could just grab in the morning and throw in his lunchbox with some other things on the side. And it would defrost by the time lunch happened. And it was super fresh and ready. So, you need to, if you can, find a coach or a community where you can help get some help analyzing what your family needs would be over the weekend. That will hopefully help you stay on track.
Thank you, Karina, for those wonderful tips. And, I'm a big proponent of meal prep days,
Mm,
right? And making a list, having a list, and how can we make these meals? My kids are now, teens and 20s, but still, this morning, I made blueberry muffin, but we don't add much sugar in it, blueberry oats meal. So just to have a little bit sugar, sometimes I think it's okay. Like literally drizzled it with tiny little icing, sugar icing, oh, like right here. So make it healthier, but still like give them that little taste, right? That they still need a little sweetness.
I
So,
think so. And do you do grain bowls, Kalindi?
yes, the grain bowls are wonderful. Kids love grain bowls, like putting things together on their own with, all the like roasted veggies, some grains cooked, quinoa, farro, brown rice or regular rice, and then having some, like kachumber, that's what we call it, cucumbers, onions, tomatoes. So there is a little crunch to it. So grain bowls or, bowls are a great way to introduce kids
Mm.
to different kind of foods. Dr. Jina Shah, we just, we are again, and say similarly, we are a multi-generational household. Uh, I have kids and I have parents, mother-in-law. So I know we spoke about how can we introduce our seniors also, our senior parents also to this lifestyle. I would love to hear from you.
Well, I will say that I don't live with them, right? So that would be
Right.
a different situation also. But whether it's for two adults living together, which is my primary household, or whether you have kids or whether you do have seniors living with you, you're trying to introduce it into a senior household, which is my situation. One thing that I find incredibly useful, and maybe others, is an Instant Pot, because you can batch cook grains, you can batch cook beans. And those of us from Indian backgrounds where we had these big whistle bearing pressure cookers,
Pressure cooker.
remember there were containers in them, right? We'd call them dabbos, and you would stack a bunch of different containers in the pressure cooker. Well, you can do the same thing in an Instant Pot. And it's actually a little hard for me to persuade my parents to use it. I keep kind of going over there and saying, hey, you could do mom's oatmeal in this, Dad. You can cook your dal in this. You can do this. But for our household, we find it incredibly useful because we will batch cook things that are, staples throughout the week. So we will batch cook oat groats or steel cut oats, batch cook lentils, batch cook like rice and quinoa, you kind of, oh, here. So my husband's giving me, an example of a container that you can stack in the Instant Pot. And you have to just figure out a little bit of what's compatible cooking times. You can do more than one thing. Some of my family members have more than one Instant Pot if they want to batch cook double quantities or big quantities for big families, or if they are having a big family gathering. So that's a kind of a practical tip that I would say. I would also just make one other point about changing and making changes. Sometimes there are moments in an individual or family's life that they're willing to make drastic changes. And so, like, for example, a gentleman who was having a heart attack, like I was his doctor back in the hospital days, and I had the opportunity to talk to him about diet. Right then was a moment when he was willing to make a change because he had a scare. And back then, we still have the evidence of benefits of removing meat and to some extent dairy. Like I think that wasn't quite as strong back then as maybe we have now. So there are moments like that, and I feel like maybe what Dr. Reshma pointed out about climate change, it's like we're having a cultural crisis moment. And the young people really feel it. Like we had way back in the 60s and 70s, we had an environmental consciousness. Francis Moore Lappé wrote Diet for a Small Planet. But now we're seeing day-to-day effects of the climate. We're seeing, extreme weather events. We're seeing weird hot and dry spells and floods in some places and hurricanes and others. So it feels like there's a moment now where young people especially are thinking about their future and really interested in making changes. So sometimes you can make changes at those moments where people perceive there's an increased urgency, and you just have to overcome other factors like inertia and peer pressure to keep doing things the way that people want to do them, and the way that market forces are encouraging people to keep doing things the way that the standard American diet forces them to do.
Thank you, Dr. Shah. And you brought all the important perspectives into the conversation, how the younger generation is adopting it more for climate change there. And then our older generation, our seniors, they can adopt it to, making smaller meals or making many multiple meals and make it more practical. I want to go back to Dr. Reshma Shah. So, we discussed earlier about family meals, right? So how do you recommend or how do you suggest to make it more of a positive feeding environment in like how to creating these habits very early on? How do we involve them?
Yeah, I think that parents have to be in it for the long game. I think a lot of times they feel so much pressure that at this meal my child has to eat their broccoli, or that this meal my child has to eat whatever the food is. And the more tension and stress you bring at the dinner table, the less likely you're going to be effective in the long term. And so one of the things that I tell parents is even before you change what kids are eating, focus on making sure that the mealtime is a pleasant place to be. Because if kids look forward to coming to the table, if it's enjoyable, you're having good conversation, the food will kind of end up taking care of itself. But if every time they come to the dinner table, you're forcing them to eat two more bites, or you're saying, you can't have dessert unless you finish your dinner, it creates a dynamic that is not going to set them up for success in the long term. I always tell parents, you don't want them to just be eating broccoli at your dinner table. You want them to be choosing broccoli when they're away at college or out in the world. And so the foundation for that is making sure that the dinner table is a place that kids look forward to. And so the things that you want to do are don't talk about how many bites or negotiate or force at the dinner table. Don't talk about stressful things. Don't talk about, did you do your homework? Did you clean your room? Did you do all the things? Focus on making dinner time a time where you talk about your day and you have pleasant conversation. And the most important thing that I think that parents can actually do is to lead by example. So instead of telling your kids to eat their broccoli, let them watch you enjoying your broccoli. And then slowly, slowly, you're going to make the changes. So sometimes it's just making sure that at every meal you have salad, you have broccoli, you have all the healthy things. And then it's really up to the kids to kind of choose to eat those foods and to eat them. And it may take a little bit longer, but I think it's much more effective than forcing them or negotiating.
You brought in very important points. Kids learn, I think, just for example, being a parent, or kids learn more from what you do rather than what you say, right?
Yeah,
So
because they're
having
not paying
all,
attention to what you say at all.
right. So they're observing, their eyes are open. So constantly just creating that reinforcing environment. One thing I found very helpful was having a bowl of fruit always in the
Yeah.
visual, in our visual field, right? Being a neuroscientist, I always am like, knowing that your visual field is the first one, your eyes are the first one to eat anything or look at anything. So having those things in the visual field, very important. So on my countertop, I always have like this stacked little, I forget the name, we have it, and that all those bottles are filled with nuts. And then our snack drawer is way in the back where you have to make an effort to reach. I mean, they have their snacks, but it's very far off. So, you have to take few steps to reach there. So in the visual field, just creating those colors, having all those, foods present that when you want to munch on something, that's the first one you grab.
I think
So
one of the things I remember doing for the kids is like, that time when they're home from school, but it's not quite dinner time, they're hungry.
right.
What I would do is, if I had the time, I would just have some hummus and vegetables just cut up on the table. So they didn't even have to say, what can I have for snack? Or it was just there. And I think to your point, when it's there and you catch them at the right moment, you don't even have to have the conversation or the negotiation. Like if they're hungry and it's cut up, and especially spend a little bit of extra time and make sure that, it looks pretty, you've got all the colors, make it appetizing. And before you know it, like the whole tray of vegetables is gone just because you laid it out. You didn't even have to talk to them about it.
Yeah, and I have to give my mother-in-law a lot of credit for doing that. She will peel the fruits. So one less step for them. She will chop the fruits and have like a bowl ready. So, however, I think rather than pointing out or saying, just having it in their field of vision makes a big difference.
I think even as adults, like if someone were to cut up an apple for me and give it to me, I'd be so happy just to eat it rather than feeling like, you have to go and do it yourself. I still do that for the kids when they come home. If all I do is cut up the fruit and I bring it to them, they'll eat it. But if I relied on them to go to the refrigerator and get it themselves, it would never happen.
Yeah,
And Kalindi,
wonderful.
for your mother-in-law, if she's cutting it up for the kids, she's probably eating it herself too. So
Yeah,
it makes it
absolutely.
that much easier. Like just like when you have kids involved in food prep, if she's involved in the food prep, she's going to be eating that too. So that's actually helpful. It's a helpful habit. She wants to be, a good model, but she's also doing it herself for the kids.
Yeah, and a lot of when we're talking about cutting up, she also does something like, preps all the veggies for me for the week. And having that ready, it makes I do majority of meal prep on the weekend on Sunday, the harder part. But then having all those chopped vegetables ready for you to go during the weekdays makes it so much easy. It's like, the process is just automatic. Karina, anything that you can add to while you're talking to families or when you're doing the community outreach, any pointers, specific pointers that you would like
Yeah,
to?
sure. The planning ahead. I was also fortunate enough to be home when my kids would come home for a lot of their years, and that platter of fruits and vegetables and romaine lettuce, even some greens. So we had this funny thing. I called them mandatory greens. The only thing they had to try in the kitchen was the greens because I really wanted to make sure they had an early exposure to the slightly bitter, slightly different texture of greens. And my oldest was very, very, very picky. We always teased him he ate a very beige colored diet. But even if it was bananas and apples and a little romaine lettuce, I knew it was getting in there. And now he eats everything. So a lot of my families like to put their favorite meals on little cards like this. And then it becomes a discussion, whatever it is that I've got, like the pasta one, the tacos, maybe with like a walnut or a lentil meat inside, an alphabet soup or a lentil soup or a vegetable soup. And then this goes like on a door or on the wall. So it's just there. And the kids can say, I don't want pasta again. Can we have something different? So it's a continual discussion of your five top people-pleasing meals that work in your house, whether it's for your older adult parents or whether it's for your kids or your, adult kids, whoever's at home. So having that helps you go to the grocery store with your consistent list, and it helps it be a discussion. Like you can use it in other forms of problem solving with the kids too. Like if this is how our week is going to go, which night will we have the least amount of time? Which night will we have the most amount of time? And if we have the most amount of time, would someone like to be the head cook that night? So, if they have something that they want to add to that list, maybe they can take the responsibility for gathering those recipes and making it. And then we make a big fuss, of course. We would make a big fuss or, over how delicious the meal they made was. And that is so reinforcing. Again, as Dr. Shah said, we are here for the long haul. We are building long term, and we're modeling behavior for their whole life, right? I want this to be like all the way until, touch wood that they are 90, and they are still thinking, wow, I really am craving broccoli. How can I make that this week? We want these behaviors long term. So I'm happy to answer any questions at all, but I could talk about this forever. So thank you.
Thank you. So, let's switch a little bit on culture, like, cultural cuisine. So, since family food is deeply connected to culture, traditions, and family identity. Dr. Jina Shah, I'm going to pick on you now. How can as families incorporate plant-based eating while still honoring traditional cuisines and cultural food?
I'm actually going to piggyback off of what Karina said. I think that note cards is a great idea. Like if families, whatever their structure, whatever their age range, are able to collect their favorites and consider then um, what is healthier. Maybe they're already healthy. Maybe there's healthier, like if you're making a salad or kachumbar, that's already pretty healthy. So maybe a dal is already pretty healthy. Maybe people can, if they're used to adding sugar, maybe they don't add the sugar. If they're used to adding a lot of salt, maybe they consider what their salt needs really are and what the risks are. So maybe tweak those recipes a little bit. If their favorite meal is a fried dish, can they swap it out for a baked version of that dish? So maybe like collect those recipes, make cards like Karina's saying, and then consider how to actually rotate them, make them interesting, agree on what they want to have, get the ingredients accordingly. I think it's so variable how families organize their meals, who gets the groceries, who cooks them, right? So it could be one person. As people get older, it may not just be the mom or the mom and the dad, right? Like it might be older kids are going to help the parents, or if you're helping senior parents, they have their own ideas about what they want to get, and an adult might be helping senior parents modify what they're already cooking. But I would say work like Dr. Reshma said also to make mealtime pleasant, make it a loving experience. A lot of times for senior parents, it's a wonderful social time. They love to be with their kids and their grandkids. And for example, my parents both have diabetes, and we could say, no cake for you. You guys have diabetes, but we can loosen up a little bit. They're in their mid 80s. Maybe they can have half a piece so that they can enjoy it and feel like they're part of everything. But then what else can we have along with the meal, that is healthy? What else can we incorporate at other parts of the meal? So it's a balance. I don't think we want to deprive people of the joy of eating things together, but there's ways to make the routine better, and there's ways to incorporate healthier alternatives.
Yeah, like, just you mentioned dal, right? Make I'm Gujarati, so we are used to eating a very thin version of dal. But then I realized that mostly we are we're not getting enough nutrients from a very thin version. So we make it thicker,
Yeah.
add less water to it, then reduce sugar. Some of the families are used to putting tempering or tarka, ghee tarka. You can completely avoid that,
Yeah.
do oil free, or you can put a little bit, replace that with oil. Some very, very easy cultural swaps, like Karina mentioned, chana masala, which is naturally vegan or plant-based.
Right.
You don't need any dairy in it. Have it with, instead of just rice, add a little quinoa to rice, right? So some easy cultural swaps. Oats, we started initially when we made oatmeal, uh, just felt it was bland, so added some chai masala to it to make it a little, give it a little flavor. So I think blending cultural traditions really helps us adopt or makes that process much easier.
And maybe you could just add like you've reminded me that we have family members that make masala oats. So
Yes,
if they don't want a sweet oats, make it a savory oats. There's
savory oats.
so many benefits of turmeric. People will take it on capsule. It's in our cuisine. Turmeric and garam masala, it's in our cuisine. Put it in dal, put it in oats, put in whatever you want. It's good for us. It's fine, you know. I feel like maybe the whole foods plant-based mainstream movement might be missing some of the Ayurvedic benefits of some of our spices, and it's what makes food tasty for a lot of people. So put them in. You use them for what the asafoetida, the hing to help digestibility. You know, the curry leaves, the some of the South Indian spices that we're experimenting with, even if we're not South Indian. My roommate in medical school, I think she was Punjabi background. Her dad lost a bunch of weight. He wanted to do that by eating sambar with, tons of vegetables. You can put tons of vegetables in with dal, and it's super nutrient dense. So there are some ways to incorporate traditional, healthful components of traditional meals too, not just cutting out things.
Yeah, and then you reminded me of savory oats. We replace we're used to eating poha. We
Yeah.
replace that with oats, and it is so delicious. The same recipe, just replace oats instead of poha, add oats, right? Karina, would love to hear what all cultural recipes do you guys share with the community? Anything that you can share would be wonderful.
Oh yeah, but that's that. Thank you. So on our website, and I did put it in the chat, the shortcut is www.ppmny.org. And then you'll see that there's a recipe section. So we have a very multicultural community. We have a lot of Latin members, so we do a lot of recipes from the Dominican Republic or from Mexico, and but we also have traditional African American recipes. We have Indian recipes from the various regions. I've been working on my own home-based idli and sambar recipe. It needs improvement, so I'm going to have to check in with you all, see what I'm doing wrong. But anyway, with much less salt, and then not too, no, not stepping away a little bit from the ghee and using, either just a little bit of oil or no oil at all. So there are a lot of recipes in there. I also recently added for a webinar that's coming up. Um, uh, I added some higher protein recipes. So recipes where, women, especially over 50, over 60, they can at least be guaranteed one meal where one serving is 30 grams of protein or more. So there's an awful lot there. And I'm happy to take any questions on more specifics.
Yeah, and a lot of like I am a big fan of high protein tofu. Uh,
Hmm.
it- I we get it at local Trader Joe's store. It is twice the protein. Like the serving size is 3 ounces, and it at least gets you about 15 to 20 grams of protein. So adding that to your foods, making a scramble or just I just roll it in spices and quickly cook it on a pan, and it really turns out delicious. So just making it easy, right, during the weekdays. So have a big
Yeah.
portion. So can add it to any of my bowls that I make. A perfect would be tofu, chickpeas, then roasted veggies, a little bit of grain. It makes a whole, a great, flavorful meal. And
Yeah, that would be amazing. Like in like like a spinach, like a sag paneer, but instead of the paneer, you would do your tofu cubes. That would be amazing. Yeah, that would be really incredible.
And Karina, for people who are looking to start, looking for community, would you share what PPMNY has, are there any Kickstart programs or anything if you
Okay.
could share with people?
Yeah, thank you. Sure. So, every other month or so, I am teaching that free Get Started class on Zoom. It's very low key, and we take a lot of questions. We talk about recipes, and I have a mentor, just like you, Kalindi, who comes on and makes a recipe. And if we have if we have a request, we're happy to have that recipe covered. Also, we do have a jump start coming up. People are really interested in spending 3 weeks, 1 week of prep, so 4 weeks in total with us. It's called the Jump Start. It's starting around April 15th, April 16th. I'll put it in the chat right now. And we have scholarships for people with kidney disease. But honestly, if there is someone in need who isn't able to pay the lowest level of the Jump Start, we always have people who will fund that. So don't let that get in your way. You get to hear from a lot of doctors like Dr. Michelle McMacken, Dr. Jessica Krant, some local New York and US doctors who come on and share their time as volunteers just to make sure that, as everyone here has done so well tonight, just we've hit all the corners of the room. So we've taken away all the rub, all the frustration, and made it as easy for you to make those bigger changes.
Thank you, Karina. And Dr. Shah, if you have any upcoming sessions or anything you would like to talk about that people can take advantage of. I know we are different coasts, but anything that you're doing virtually or anything that you're on mute, Dr. Shah.
You'd think after all of these many years of Zoom, this would not be an issue ever again. Yeah, so the easiest thing I would say is we are hosting with the team at Plant-Based Juniors 4 live cooking classes. And I think they should be a lot of fun. And our goal is to kind of cook 3 plant-based recipes focused on specific food that is very nutrient dense, is very versatile, and sometimes parents really struggle to get kids to eat more of. So the first session is, I think, at the end of March. It's focused all on tofu. So we'll do 3 recipes, start to finish. And not only are we going to cook the recipes, but it's going to be, parents can ask questions about whether it's a nutrition question, a substitution question. We get a lot of substitution questions. My kid won't eat this. What could I do instead? So we're doing 3 recipes on tofu, start to finish. And then the subsequent sessions will focus on whole grains, vegetables, and also beans and lentils. I even have a recipe for using chickpeas to make cookies, and it's probably one of my most downloaded recipes. And so, it isn't about giving up on eating desserts and things, but like if you can make a recipe that has chickpeas and whole grains and, nuts and things like that, and my whole family actually really loves it. So I think I can put it in the chat, but you can register for either an individual class or for all 4 classes.
Thank you, Dr. Shah. I also wanted to make an announcement. I've shared a link. Dr. Shah, do you have a link that you can share or anything in the chat? That would be wonderful. And Dr. Shah has an Instagram page on where she really posts, you posts recipes with kids, and you could follow her for more information. She has a book. She's a published author, a wonderful book, Nourish, which she shared the page in her slide. So many, many resources are available at World Vegan Vision. We do community events, outreach events, and one of them is upcoming is our New York chapter is hosting Dr. Urvi Shah next month. I have shared a link also on the chat. Feel free to go to our website, subscribe so you can receive emails about our events. There are, as we said, PPMNY is another our great partner who has jumpstart programs and has a lot of community-based potlucks that they're organizing. So many resources here for anyone who's looking to start. And as always, feel free to reach out to us at World Vegan Vision. And we hope that there is plenty of information that you gained and insights that you gained from today's conversation. So I wanted to a heartfelt, give a heartfelt thanks to Dr. Reshma Shah, Dr. Jina Shah, Katrina Pearse, PPMNY, for joining us and partnering with us. So having said that, we're ready to take any questions. If any of our attendees have questions, you can unmute and share your questions, concerns, anything. Okay, seems like nobody has questions and everybody is now ready to jump on to a plant-based diet. But yes, but from today's lecture it was it's very inspiring, and also like, talking about main things that you don't have to do this overnight. It can be gradual, and you could take one step at a time, and one step leads to cumulatively leads to many steps. Sorry, yes, Gina, Dr. Gina Shah, please go ahead.
I just wanted to offer an interaction with the audience, if people are willing to turn their video on, and just ask, like, of the audience that's here, how many people are already. Oh, I see Amisha has her hand up. So we'll definitely go to that, but maybe first, and then afterward, how many people are already plant-based, and then versus how many people might be considering going plant-based, and if you're already plant-based. Did you get any ideas here about transitioning your family? So those are just some suggestions, but let's go to the
Wonderful. Yes, I
up.
completely agree. Yep. Amisha, go ahead.
Yeah, good morning, everyone, and thank you for the informative session. It was really great, and thank you, Kalindi. I know Kalindi from since childhood, and she has always been inspiring as a friend, and now she is at this platform. So we are proud of you, Kalindi, so much.
Thank you.
And thank you for inviting me. So I have noted down some few questions. I know you all are busy, and we might find short of time. So first of all, first question is, what is the most, like, what is one of the simple healthy habit that we all can start from today to improve our daily meals? Like, don't wait for tomorrow. I think we can start from today itself with just making a list for my grocery, and there's a way to start.
I would love to just jump in and say just drop dairy. The biggest change was from, when we went from vegetarian to vegan and we dropped dairy and we didn't realize how lactose intolerant and how dairy protein intolerant we all really were. And it just really changed our health immediately, like within 10 days.
And I'll piggyback on that one. That was a big one for me. Dropping that dairy made such a huge difference in my life. Dropping the dairy, but pick up that oat milk, pick up almond milk, try different milks and see what works for you. For me, I love my chai with oat milk, Oatly oat milk. That's my that's my daily addiction. My cup of tea just is so amazing, and people who come to our house, they love it. Nobody's ever said that this does not taste like real cha, right? So that is my first thing. If that is your addiction, that is your chai addiction. But then I found almond milk works amazing with my oats. I love almond milk with that. Then soy milk works great with baking. So over the years, I have like sort of my refrigerator is stacked with different kinds of milks, but every milk has a purpose there. A plant-based milk has a purpose there. Dr. Shah.
I think if I were to give people one habit in terms of, actually, I'm going to give two. One is just do a little bit of planning. You'll be amazed at how, think about your biggest shopping day. For me, just like with Karina, it's usually Sunday. It's when I go to the market. And if you have a rough plan, you don't have to be like strict, like you can't deviate from it. But if you have a rough plan, you're going to be less likely to go to takeout or to do the frozen pizza or whatever the case may be. So have I actually have a really simple, it's in that free starter guide. I have a note card system that I do. So on one side of the note card, I make a list of the meals, the lunches, the snacks that I'm planning to make, a rough guide. It doesn't have to be precise, So if I'm going to do a tofu stir fry, if I'm going to do a lentil soup, and then the next thing I do is I go into my fridge and pantry, and I see what do I have? What do I need to buy? And then on the same note card, I make a list of all the things that I have to buy. And that way I have a plan for the week. And so I'm not every day thinking about what am I going to cook? What am I going to make? So I think planning your meals, using what you have on hand, that's my first tip. And the second tip is really try to have fun with it. Because if it's not fun, you're not going to do it in the long run. So make the food delicious, make it fun, and don't be too hard on yourself. I think there is room for that going out to dinner with friends and having that cupcake on a birthday or whatever the case may be, but have some planning and try to sort of be a little relaxed and have some fun about it.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think that was really very informative. And I heard from Dr. And maybe Dr. Sorry, Karina and Dr. Zina, maybe, or maybe from you. I don't remember. I did note down that tofu and tempa, right? This, I'm not sure it's the correct
Tempeh.
pronunciation. Tempeh, yeah. I have heard about a lot, but I have never used those. I know they might be rich in protein.
Yeah.
And so maybe if I plan to buy today, is there any quick go-to, like how should I use both of them? It's
So
like a stir
if
fry.
you've never used tofu or tempeh, I would suggest start with tofu first. Because even in my own family, everybody loves tofu, but my kids even tempeh is not their favorite. I like tempeh, but I would start with tofu because tempeh is a little bit has a little bitterness to it. It can be a
Bitterness,
little
right?
bit more challenging if you haven't used it. So I think a lot of times people will pick up tempeh and then we're like, oh, I don't like tofu or tempeh. So start with tofu. Tofu is one of the most versatile ingredients. And with my own parents, I have struggled to get. My dad actually he'll eat tofu. My mom is very skeptical, but it really absorbs the flavors of the spices and all the things you add. I make a tofu tikka masala. It's actually, I think the recipe is on my website. And instead of paneer, you're just using tofu. And it really comes down to the spices and the other ingredients that you add because it really absorbs those flavors. But if I could make one nutrient suggestion, especially for people who are already following a vegetarian diet, they're relying a lot on dairy to substitute for some of the sort of protein foods. If you could start cooking with tofu in your regular meals, it's going to make a huge improvement. It's so high in protein, especially the super firm stuff that Kalindi was talking about. Very high in protein. It's got fiber. It's got a lot of phytonutrients. A lot of people are afraid of cooking with soy because they're afraid that it's going to have these estrogen effects. Soy is actually one of the most health promoting foods when it comes to protein foods. So start slowly, experiment. I think a tofu scramble using spices. For kids, you can make a really simple, easy tofu nugget. You're just going to take the tofu, tear it up into chunks, put some seasonings, garlic powder, paprika, whatever you want. A little bit of oil if you we use oil in the house, so a little bit of oil, and then you could put a little bit of cornstarch, and then just in the air fryer or in the oven, it gets nice and crispy, and kids love it. They're like little, instead of chicken nuggets, they're tofu nuggets. So if you haven't already tried tofu, don't be afraid. It's a really versatile ingredient, and if you have not the best experience, just explore. There's so many recipes you can find online. If you look for easy vegan tofu recipes, you're going to have more recipes than you'll know what to do with. And I think it's one of the ingredients, especially if you're looking to improve your protein intake. Tofu is a great place to get started. Don't be intimidated and just try a lot of recipes.
Okay.
And I'll add one more thing to it, Amisha, if you get
Mhm.
high protein tofu from Trader Joe's, and I think other stores also have it, it's called Super Firm or something, but that has very less water in it. So because it's high in protein and it's easiest to cook and closest to if we are used to paneer, that's the closest one. And if they paid me a nickel for every time I said it, or a penny for
Mhm.
every time I said, I would have been a billionaire by now. I can say that.
My dad loved tofu scramble in the morning. And my mom and my whole family, even people that haven't yet dropped dairy, find the ease of tofu even better than paneer. So, with paneer in the old days, my parents used to weigh it down and press out the water. You don't have to do that with super firm tofu. So I would add my vote of yes to using tofu for paneer. And then also, even for either tofu or for tempeh, one way that you can make it absorb flavors that you like is to marinate, meaning you can cut up either the tofu or the tempeh into pieces and then you let it soak. You can let it soak in Indian spices and some liquid. So if you use soy sauce or vinegar or some other liquid, you add the spices to it, it absorbs it, and then you can bake it or you can cook with it as well. And then you get the flavor that you might like, and the tofu becomes a good medium for that.
Yeah, and Peter has a suggestion here. Little has an excellent organic soy milk product that is very affordable and very nutrient rich. Thank you, Peter, for that suggestion. Okay. So if there are no more questions, I'm gonna thank our panelists from the bottom of my heart for a wonderful presentation and for your time. And as you all know that, World Vegan Vision does many, many more outreach efforts. So please go to our website, subscribe to our newsletter for more events. And we hope that you got plenty of resources and information from today's session. So thank you, Dr. Reshma Shah, Dr. Jina Shah, and Karina for your time and for your expertise. Okay. And we have also the recording of our session, which will be on our YouTube. So for those who couldn't join, they can always go back to this session. So thank you all, and I hope to continue this conversation on another session. Thank you.